يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما ويدخل الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما صدق الله العلي العظيم. صل على محمد وآل محمد. Now, without further ado, I'd like to request Dr. Hasanain Walji to please begin his lecture. Please welcome him with the loudest of salawats. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm being told to just leave this in place. Okay.
Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والحمد لله الذي جعلني من أمتي سيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين طه وياسين أحمد محمود أبو القاسم محمد ومن المحبين عترة الطاهرين. أما بعد، قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. صلوات. Moving today, we continue our series. We've been talking about development of a human being. We talked about ethical mindfulness. We talked about emotional awareness. We talked about the values of empathy, compassion, integrity. All these are building blocks for a human being to progress and reach their ultimate potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all. Because describing insan in the Holy Quran, Allah said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, that we have created the human being in the best of molds. And that truly is our potential. Also in the past presentations we talked about the idea of how a human being can go above the level of angels and go below the level of animals. The choice has been left to us. Allah has given us the potential to reach either ends, and it will be up to us as to where we do. Today, I would like to focus on society, because individuals make up society. Without a society, an individual is not able to progress or even live. If we did not have a society, where would we be? And a society cannot be a society without individuals, human beings coming together and forming a society and moving on towards progress, and this is what we see. So when we began, we said the mission statement of an ummah is the same as the mission statement of a human being, of an individual. And that is this ayah that I recited, Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 2, that cooperate with each other. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, cooperate with each other in that which leads to goodness and righteousness, and not with sin and aggression. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. So the ideas of bir and taqwa is on one side, ism and udwan, sin and aggression, is on the other side. Thank you. And this is where our journey as individuals is, and so is our journey as a society. This country that we live in was established on the best of principles. When you compare the Quranic principles with the US Constitution, you will see many similarities. But that's all in theory. When we look at history, when we look at the real narration of history, we have done some good things as a country, and we have done some pretty bad things as a country. And if we can recognize as a country that we've done some bad things, and it will probably take us towards the good, towards taqwa and bir. But if we refuse to accept that we made those mistakes as a country, then unfortunately it would be very difficult for us to make amends and to become a better society. You know, an error only becomes a mistake if you do not correct the error. You have an opportunity, and if you accept that I erred, and it's human to err, all of us are fallible, except for the Aimma alayhimus salam, who are the infallibles. All of us will make a mistake. When we make a mistake, when we err, then we make sure that we repent, we forgive ourselves, and move on by promising ourselves that we will not do it. Well, to move on, we've been talking about all these values of intentional living, critical thinking, qalb salim, value proposition of insan, which I just talked about. And yesterday we talked about emotional awareness, ethical mindfulness, and integrity. How do you build a human being with integrity? And if you have all human beings who have integrity, then you have a society which is a society with integrity. And inshallah tomorrow we'll talk about a life well lived in a society. Some of you asked me this question yesterday, so I have the two links on the screen here. I'll just give you a second to perhaps write it down or jot it down. The workshop that we have that is going on at Harvard University on Imam Hussain al-Islam at the Ashura project at Harvard. It's an open workshop. It'll be open until Arba'in. After Arba'in, the workshop contents will be closed. So you are invited to partake of that, go through. There are some wonderful things. There is also an associated website with it, which is called lifeofimam.com. And this particular site has some wonderful explanations and really graphically beautiful stories, particularly for children. It goes through the 5 stages of the life of Imam Hussain al-Islam. And it goes right from his birth until Karbala. And there are 5 sections. 3 have been completed, 2 are still in the works. But I invite you, and especially I invite our young friends and parents with young children to engage our children with them, because this is the level at which the next generation is going to be engaged with our faith. And this is one tool that we have. Hopefully, if you haven't written it down or if you do not get it, then please reach out to me and I'll be able to share that with you. So, to recap, yesterday we talked about mental wellness was an alignment of your 3 H's, which means your head, your heart, and your hands are all in alignment. They are not pulling in different directions. What you think, what you feel, and what you do must all be in alignment, because that is the meaning of integrity. We talk about ethical mindfulness, emotional awareness, and then behavior and action through our empathy and compassion. I stopped at this point where we said, why is compassion good for us, particularly? Well, research shows that depression and anxiety are indeed mainly linked to self-focus. Me, myself, and I. The entire universe must revolve around me. I am so deeply into myself that all I see is me, myself, and I. And this is where we have problems, that when you do something for someone else rather than your own self, when your self-focus shifts to focusing on someone else, doing something for someone else, you will find that this me, myself, and I syndrome is diluted, and you are able to focus on a wider set of things. Do you recall a time when you were feeling, pretty low, pretty blue, and suddenly a close friend or a relative calls you and needs some urgent help with a problem? Immediately you are in that mode, the empathetic mode, the compassionate mode, that you will go out and you will help. You find that while you are doing that, your own mood kind of lifts a little bit, and rather than feeling blue, you feel useful, that you have done something for another human being. It shifts your mood and you feel slightly better, having gained a perspective on your own situation as well. This happens to all of us. In fact, I don't have the time to quote the actual studies. You can Google them. But if you Google, compassion and self-esteem, or compassion and empathy, and research on it, you will find there are a lot of studies out there which show that compassionate people have a higher level of self-esteem, they are more empathetic to others, and they are more trusting and cooperative with other people. Because it is the nature of compassion. When you, remember I said that do not confuse empathy with compassion. Empathy is a door to compassion. If you feel empathy, if you feel empathetic, if you feel somebody else's pain, which is what Allah has given you, that fitrah. Remember we talked about, flinching when you see someone's finger getting stuck in a door. You will flinch, something will happen. Or if you see or even see on TV that somebody's body part being cut, maybe your finger being cut and blood is oozing out, you feel a sensation within yourself. You feel something. That is empathy. So you are able to broaden your perspective beyond yourself. And when this self-focus shifts to other people, then you feel better. Also, there is a whole situation of positive feedback loop where, feedback that comes back and there is that positivity and it's cyclical, that one thing leads to another and you keep feeling better and you get out of your blues and you're able to sort of loop in your emotional well-being. So, yesterday we said that integrity is, and this is my own formula, it's not Einstein's formula, it's E times 3 plus C is integrity. Emotional awareness, ethical mindfulness, empathetic response and compassion. These are the elements which will give you a level of integrity, and we talked about that. It's a matter of taking that first step. To get out of our own, sometimes it's the anger loop, sometimes it's an anxiety loop. In order to get out of it, you need to practice some of these. Momini, I say this and I keep saying it. None of this is easy. But nobody says that life was going to be easy. But if you practice it, if you try it, if you work at it, then you will get it. Unfortunately, there is no microwave approach to mental health and mental wellness. It's a process that one needs to go through, each one of us. We all have our moments, anxious moments. We all have our moments of sadness and so on and so forth. And then if you allow it to be chronic, if you allow the sadness to be chronic, then it develops into mental illness and the problems that we have. So, I wanted to share something with you. Someone who has been also following these lectures was good enough to send me an email of some recent research that has come out, which is very interesting. I think, all of us should know about this. There's some current research on the faulty diagnosis of depression. We know, and this is widely, said in the media, and everybody says, the mental health issues are the biggest issue, particularly post-COVID. If there is a post-COVID, we're still going through, the virus is still circulating. But let's say that, we are out of the big hump in terms of COVID, that 1 out of 10 Americans suffer from depression every year. Now, why is it that in the last couple of decades, the mental health issues, particularly depression, has increased? This group of researchers who have done extensive studies say that there is something which is at fault as to why these numbers are showing up as they are. Reclassified normal human sadness was largely something that was a normal experience. A level of human sadness has now been classified by the psychiatrists and the associations as abnormal experience. And the mistake lies, according to these researchers, and you're welcome to read up the paper, we have a reference, Horowitz and Wakefield, that the mistake lies at the root of the presumed epidemic of major depression. They say presumed epidemic. Why? Because the yardstick has shifted as to where do you define depression. Normal sadness is there, it's in everyone. There is a level of sadness. When you lower the bar and say, now this person goes into the category of depression, you suddenly have so many more cases of depression. And they have come out with this groundbreaking research that it is not, yes, there is greater mental health issues in this country, no one's denying that. But the figures of depression that are being shown out there by the scientific community, by the media and all that, needs to be reconsidered. And let's not fall into that particular trap. Sometimes, it's like, marketing is that you may not need the thing, but marketing is that when you look at it and you will feel like you want to buy that thing. It's psychology. Let's not fall into that psychology and you walk into a counselor's office, question them. If they diagnose and say you have depression, get a second opinion. Because yes, you may have depression. Your family member may have depression. But get a second opinion, because this whole thing seems to have been, because of that reclassification, that the cases or the numbers have increased. I thought I would share this with you, since the person who sent it to me, is very much interested in the theme that we are addressing, and I believe that as audience you need to know that. Now, taking the first step towards feeling better, cultivating compassion, is, as I said, intentional living begins with the niyyah. There's a positive intention that I am going to do this. The mind continues to waver, and breaking out of that anger loop, that anxiety loop, when we have mental health issues and you're feeling anxious, you're feeling sad, something has happened beyond your control, somebody created a spark and now there is a forest fire going on in your mind, all these things, you need to take a deep breath and say, I will intentionally cultivate that level of compassion in me. Matthew Richard, a very popular author, some of you might have read him, he said something very interesting. He said, minds are like gardens and they will grow naturally. Then he says, choice is yours. Because the wind is blowing both flowers and weeds. The choice is yours. Do you want to grow flowers in your heart or in your mind, or do you want to grow weeds? And that will depend on you as to what your intention is. I'd like to end, on this note, particularly this part, and then move on to the society, because that's our subject. Integrity then, having understood all this, that integrity truly is a soil in which all these seeds will sprout. Whether the weeds will sprout or whether the flowers will sprout is your choice. And remember, choices have consequences. But here it is. Integrity is a soil, and when you plant the seeds of value, then if you plant honesty, you will reap trust. If you plant goodness, you will reap friends. If you plant the seed of humility, then you will reap greatness. If you plant perseverance, then you will reap contentment. These are all actions and reactions of the seeds that you plant. If you plant empathy, you will then reap perspective. If you plant hard work, you will obviously reap results. If you plant forgiveness, you will reap reconciliation. These are the stages. It's what you do. You do something, there will be a reaction. A negative act will get a negative reaction. A positive act will get a positive reaction. But without the soil, nothing can grow. And therefore, without the soil of integrity in yourself, which needs to be built up, nothing will grow. There's a Japanese proverb that a soil of integrity can be washed away in a storm of egoism and self-centeredness. We ask Allah to protect us, from those storms of egoism, because one day we'll all be gone. Someone, somewhere will speak about you, will speak of you, will remember you. If you have left a priceless inheritance and a lingering legacy of integrity, people will remember you for what you were. And the crowning reward of finishing well, and tomorrow we'll talk about a life well lived, I will expand on this. They will say, yes, that was my friend. Yes, that was my uncle. Yes, that was my brother. And we stand here as we remember, said the Shuhada, and we say, yes, that is our Imam. This is the value of integrity. And this is the crowning reward of that level of integrity. Salawat. So now moving on to the subject today, the concept of a society of believers. The Blessed Prophet of Islam ﷺ gives us a beautiful simile. He says, and I quote, that in their mutual love, compassion and sympathy for one another, believers are like one body. When one part of it suffers a complaint, all other parts join in, sharing in the sleeplessness and fever. Those who have a healthcare background or those who have studied, biology at any level will know that if one of the organs is getting weaker, the other organs in the body try and compensate for it. I don't want to go into a biology lesson, but this is something natural. That if an organ is failing, then other organs try to catch up so that there is equilibrium in the body and the body systems are working. This is what the Blessed Prophet is referring to, that when one part suffers a complaint, the entire body is in pain. And this is how we need to be as a society of believers. If we find that our brethren are suffering in one part of the world, we're part of the Ummah. Yes, when we see it on TV, we do feel the pain. We do feel, some anxiety, some concern. Question is, how do I convert that concern, that sadness that I have looking at those pictures into something positive? There are so many opportunities to join causes, to stand up for those people, for the marginalized, and that truly is what we should do if we are to honor the Shuhada of Karbala and their sacrifices. If we compare this to the city-state of Medina, this was a model pluralistic society in practice. There were civil rights and responsibilities. Study, the very first constitution on this planet was the Constitution of Medina that the Blessed Prophet wrote. And this had civil rights, respecting diversity. There were Jews, there were Christians, there were pagans living in Medina, and they all had their own rights. Nobody was persecuted for their beliefs. They had freedom of speech and religion. There was elimination of prejudice. The tribal chiefs and the entire issue of higher and lower tribes, all these prejudices were removed in the city-state of Medina. And so much so, the Blessed Prophet could have said that I am now the head of the government of Medina and I will rule as I wish. He did not do that. History tells us that as the Constitution of Medina was being created, he consulted all the tribes and he consulted all the different faiths as to how the Medina society was going to be run. This is a shining example in the history of humanity. It's an inspiring example that it was a democratic, tolerant state, compassionate towards all. Modern society needs to learn. Yes, there are some good democratic principles. And there is what I call guided democracies, where there are certain people who try and run the democracy the way they want. It's not truly a democracy. But that's something that's out of our control. What is in our control is the state of the Ummah, the state of the Muslim Ummah. The Ummah that Imam Hussain al-Islam had gone out to say that I am leaving Medina for the Islah of the community, the Ummah of my grandfather. I am talking about that Ummah. Where is that Ummah today? We seem to have lost its past glory. What do we have to show for ourselves as the recipients whose legacy is the Medina society? Imam Hussain had to give his life in order to save the values of the Medina society. And yet what do we have today? ISIS, failed states, killings. Do you know that the US has over 6,000, or depending on how you count it, between 6 and 11,000 if you count community colleges. It's got 6 to 11,000 institutions of higher education. India alone has got 8,000 institutions of higher education. Between 50 countries of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Communities or Islamic Countries, we have just about 500 universities. Where is the lead in terms of knowledge with our Ummah? The level of literacy, unfortunately, amongst the Muslim Ummah happens to be some of the lowest, and the Nobel Prize winners. The irony is that there is one Muslim who actually won. We now don't even consider him as a Muslim, Dr. Salam. This is the irony of this, and then we are the ones, the followers of Imam Hussain al-Islam, the Muslim Ummah, to be the champions of universal values. And the Ummah cannot say that Imam Hussain is not one of us. Instead, they do. The example of Imam Hussain al-Islam is followed or accepted by all sects as the grandson of the Prophet, as the martyr of humanity, and yet we are not the champions of universal values. So should we be just happy that we had a glorious history, where if we desire to remain on the right path, then we need to do some thinking about it. And this is where Karbala, the Azaa of Aba Abdullah, these gatherings, wherever they may be, I said yesterday that the sun does not set on these gatherings. These are the gatherings which require us to think about, and every speaker, wherever they are reminding us of the relevance of Karbala in shaping our future. Mu'mineen, let us not cry with Hussein only in history. We should cry. But we should also cry with Imam Hussain al-Islam in the present, and also work towards the future. But you know what our response is? More mosques. More Muslim organizations growing. You know what we do is, we actually grow like amoebas, by splitting, by dividing ourselves. This is who we are as a society. Something happens in a mosque, there's an issue, another mosque is created because I don't agree with the people who established the mosque. And then we continually grow. We've got so many mosques in the United States. Is that progress? That's something that we need to consider. In fact, there was a couplet that was said by Allama Iqbal. It is very historic. In Lahore, in Pakistan, a mosque was destroyed by some people. And in their fervor, they actually rebuilt the mosque in a single night. In a single night, in their passion, they rebuilt the mosque. Allama Iqbal, when he heard of that, said that Masjid to bana di shabbar mein ईमान की हरारत वालों ने, मस्जिद तो बना दी शब्बर में ईमान की हरारत वालों ने, मन अपना पुराना पापी है बरसों में नमाजी बन ना सके. Those with that fervor in their faith built the mosque in a night, but their heart is such that they did not prostrate in years. This is the irony, that we are out there physically doing whatever. When, and this should, I'm not saying it should not be done. When somebody insults the Blessed Prophet, we are up in arms. We will be out there with everything that we have got to protest against it, and so we should. But when Muslims are being murdered, when Muslims are being killed in a place like India, we do not lift a finger to do anything about it. This is a state of the ummah that we have, where our priorities sometimes need to be reconsidered. Why? Why is this happening? Why is this stagnation happening? I'm talking about a community of believers, and we are all part of that community. Our young are being nurtured within that community. It is the reflection that they will take to the next generation, and tomorrow inshallah we will talk a little bit about that as to how we nurture the next generations. But if we have a community that is growing up in a level of apathy, in stagnation, then the generations that will grow will be planting those same seeds within their integrity soil, and they will not be able to progress. Each parent, each community leader, each one of us have a responsibility to be able to do something. You know what happens? What we do is we tend to obsess on form over essence. Rituals are necessary. The ritual of prayer, the ritual of azah as we understand it, the rituals of dua, the rituals of the amal that we do, the ritual of amal ashura, for example, that we will inshallah do on Monday. All these rituals are necessary, but we cannot be obsessing over rituals only. We need to look at the essence of our faith. Maulana Rum talks about a bottle of perfume, and it's a great example to understand. He said, if only you look at that bottle of perfume, you admire its shape, you admire the color of the liquid that's inside it, you hold the bottle fondly, and you keep it on the mantelpiece as a decoration, it's not going to do anything for you until you open the cap of that bottle and smell the essence, the smell, the scent of that perfume, for you to get any kind of impact out of that. By merely containing ourselves within rituals and rituals only, without going deeper into the essence of our faith, is a faith of saying we have never opened that bottle of perfume. That, mu'mineen, is our issue. And what happens is that if we lose our capacity to generate ideas, if we lose our capacity to be creative, then we will be left with an insecure, a clueless ummah that will be rising up. We will not be doing justice to the Constitution of Medina, the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So what needs to be done? We need to encourage freedom of thought. There is no such thing as total conformity. Our children, our young, must be allowed to ask the hard questions that they do, because that's a society that they are living in. Our scholars are duty bound to provide those answers, because our faith has the answers. It's a matter of how that answer is narrated. It's a matter of how these things are considered in light of the movements and the progress of the world. And as people of integrity, we need to fulfill our mandate of a universal moral leadership. What do I mean by that? The Quran has given us the responsibility of a universal moral leadership. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that we have created you a ummata wasata, we have created you a nation most balanced. He is talking to us Muslims. And he is saying we have created you a nation most balanced so that you may be an example for the rest of mankind. We have been given that universal moral leadership. Are we fulfilling our mandate? And this truly is something that we need to consider. Quickly to move on, I want to describe two kinds of societies. Now that I've had my venting and I've lamented, I want to be constructive and share some things with you. There are two kinds of societies. You have what we call an accidental society and an intentional society. What's an accidental society? Where there is coexistence, but there is no cooperation. People flying on a plane, they are a society. They're an accidental society. I bought my ticket, you bought your ticket, we are on the same plane for for a coincidence. There is no cooperation. I did not ask as to who my fellow passengers are going to be. What is their faith, what is their morality, what are they going to be doing. I joined this society because I'm traveling from A to B. At best, I will do some small talk for a person sitting next to me. That's the only interaction I will have. I'll pick up my baggage and I'll go my merry way, never to see that person ever again. That's an accidental society where the people have very small or very few rights upon each other in an accidental society. Everybody does their own thing, and yes, you offer common courtesies. You do not become a nuisance, in the plane, and that you are following the rules. But that's about it. There is nothing else that exists. An intentional society, on the other hand, is where we form a society like this one. We form our organizations, we form our communities where everyone is responsible for the welfare and the prosperity of each other. These are the rules, these are the responsibilities. Risalatul Hukuk, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam teaches us. There's a whole treatise on it as to what are the responsibilities of my brothers and sisters upon me, what are the responsibilities of my parents upon me. What are the rights of my parents upon me? What are the rights of my neighbors upon me? And what is my responsibility towards them? This is something that we need to do utmost for our society to have our common welfare. The society is also responsible for the welfare of an individual. If a person has contributed in a society and now he is not able to look after himself or herself, it falls upon the society to make sure that that person is looked after. We have a shining example in the history of Islam. Imam alayhi salam was walking the streets of Kufa, and he finds an old man, a Christian, standing by the roadside begging. He goes up to him and he said, "But you were a strong man. You worked so hard. What is happening? Why are you in this state?" He said, "I'm now old. I cannot work. I cannot do anything, so I have no choice but to beg." Imam immediately orders that this Christian man was a useful member of our society. He spent his life contributing in his own way to society. He must now be paid from Baitul Mal. From the public treasury, he must be supported. These are the examples that we have in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to say that there are duties and responsibilities. We term that as Amr bil Maruf and Nahy anil Munkar. This is one of the obligations upon us. Because if we do not do this, if we do not do Amr bil Maruf, if we do not do Nahy anil Munkar, then the entire society may sink. The example that comes to mind is you're in a boat and there are 50 people in a boat, and a man starts digging a hole in that boat. One person starts digging a hole in that boat. What will we as passengers do? We will stop him. Because if he succeeds in boring a hole here, the entire boat will sink. So he's got to be stopped. This is the meaning of people within a society doing Amr bil Maruf and Nahy anil Munkar, and this is something that happens in an intentional society. On the other hand, as I said, the community is also responsible for the welfare of the individual. So the duties and the rights actually come with each other, that there are rights and responsibilities, both upon the society and upon the individual. And in fact, again to quote something that in terms of unity of purpose that was said by Allama Iqbal, and he has such a lot of wisdom. I wish that our children growing up in this country were also taught the great Urdu language so they are able to understand some of the finer points of our thinkers. It is not only Francis Bacon or somebody else. We have our thinkers who have said things which are so very profound. Here Allama Iqbal says that the individual is firm. The individual is something significant by its connection to a society, otherwise it's nothing. Because when you live in a society, there is movement, there is progress in a society. He said the waves are in the waters, outside a drop is nothing. He said that fard qaim rabte millat se tanha kuch hi nahi, moj darya mein hai birune darya kuch hi nahi. The point is that this individual cannot live without a society, and society cannot progress without an individual. Therefore, an individual is nothing. He has to come into the society and to be able to do something. And he also says, in terms of what the unity of purpose is, that there is one common gain and one common loss for all Muslims. One Prophet for all, one Iman for all, one Kaaba, one Allah, one Quran for all. How great would it be if Muslims were also one? It's much more beautiful in Urdu. I will not waste time, but this is what he has said, that this is the unity of purpose that we have. But sometimes we have these issues of having lots of discussions on minor things. Well, this is a great quote to understand that we are not all the same. Yes, we're part of the Ummah. We live under the same sky, but we don't all have the same horizons. And this is where sometimes in a society the issues begin. It's like my way or the highway. I am always right. I know the way things should be, and I know the way I should be, and I know the way you should be, and therefore everybody must conform to my ideas, because I know more than you. I am better than him. I am better than you. You know who said that? That arrogance is Iblis who said that. Ana khairum minhum. That I am better. When he was asked to prostrate, he said, I am better than them. I am better than the angels. This is an Iblis trait that we should avoid saying my way or the highway. And then you have this other trait of self-righteousness, to consider oneself better than others due to one's own estimation of goodness and piety. We are told in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Najm, that do not ascribe righteousness to yourself. Allah alone knows best who is truly pious. And we go around wearing our taqwa on our sleeve and looking down on others to say, see, he has come to the masjid after 1 year at Ashura. You don't know what he has been doing the rest of the year. Oh, but I've been coming here every day for Maghrib. There is a hikayat from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, and he said that two people entered the mosque at the same time. One was an abid, very pious man, very compliant, and one was a fasiq, that he would not do any of the rituals, any of the ibadat, and he was a fasiq. And Imam says when they left, they came out of the mosque, the abid had become fasiq and the fasiq had become abid. How did that conversion happen? Well, when the fasiq walks into the mosque, the abid feels arrogant and says, see, he's come, he probably wants something from God. That's why he's come to the mosque. And the fasiq who had entered sees the abid praying, sees this good man praying. He said, Ya Allah, this man is so nice. Make me like him. Make me the way he does things. Make me give me his heart. When they left, the fasiq, because of his prayers of forgiveness and true repentance, lives as an abid. And the abid, because of his arrogance, lives as a fasiq, as somebody who is disobedient. This is where self-righteousness leads us. It's an odd disease, this self-righteousness. We tend to say sometimes, thank God I'm not like him, or thank God I'm not like her. This is the height of arrogance. It makes everyone sick except the one who has the sickness. It's a very interesting disease. The blessed Prophet of Islam ﷺ has said that glad tidings to those more concerned with their own faults than focusing on the faults of others. So for societies to progress, the self must die. Our goal is to become a community of believers unified under the spirit of Tawheed, succumbing and submitting to only one power as Muwahhids. My way or no way is a philosophy of failure, and I say again, for a community to live, for a community to progress, the self must die. We talked about transformation, that we must be unafraid to re-examine our beliefs and practices as we move through, because if necessary, then we embrace change. Because the Quran says God does not change the condition of a people. You heard that ayah often enough to say that God does not change the condition of a people unless they make that change within themselves. So we have to empty ourselves of expectations, of our egos, of obstacles, personal agendas, and as a believers, society of believers, create a space for true listening, of healing and connections. Well, it's a strong, serious lecture, and I apologize for giving you this very heavy dose of ethics. So let's lighten this up a little bit. But there is a learning in it. Have you ever seen these geese flying in formation? The geese that fly in the sky in formation? Beautiful, sign. You wonder, how are they flying? Well, there are some lessons to be learned. When they fly in formation, the flock actually adds 71% greater flying distance than if each of the birds flew alone. This is why we need a society. 71% extra range that they get. So people who share a common direction and a sense of community can progress quicker because they are traveling on the thrust of each other. The birds teach us this. And when one goose falls out, he feels the drag. If you leave the formation, you feel the drag, you quickly come back because you cannot do it alone. So, if we have as much sense as geese, then we will stay in formation. We will stay within a society and go with those who are heading where we want to go. And we are willing to accept help and give our help to each other. When one goose tires, because there is one right at the top, as they are flying in the V formation. When one goose tires, it rotates back into formation, another goose takes up the point position. It pays turn to doing, or it pays to take turns to doing hard jobs. The volunteers don't always have to do the same thing. You take turns so that you don't get burnt out. The leadership is the same thing, that you share leadership, because otherwise you will be in a place where you're burnt out. By rotating leadership, like the geese do, we can progress faster. The other thing is, they honk. I don't know if you're close enough, and if the place is quiet enough, you can actually hear them honking. The geese flying in formation honk to encourage those up front to keep up the speed. So we need to make sure that our honking is also encouraging, not criticizing. I come into the mosque, or I walk into my school or my organization, and I have something negative to say about it. There are people working hard to make it work, so rather than barking, let us honk like the geese do, so that there is greater production. And when one goose gets sick, two geese are known to drop out of formation. They follow it to help protect it. They stay with the goose until either it's better or dies. So we stand by each other in difficult times as well as when we are strong. And when the goose sort of gets sick, then obviously we will stand by each other in difficult times. These are the lessons that we learn from these birds. And this is how a society needs to progress. Because sustaining a community, an intentional community, and I'm going to end on this note, we need to have a shared vision and a mission, shared values and principles, and we have systems which match the value of a community. Inshallah, we will continue with what we can do as individuals, with a life well lived tomorrow, and the day after is the eve of Ashur, Inshallah, we will look at the journey of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and the essence of Muharram and the heartfelt tragedy that we are here to commemorate. But all this can only be possible with the Hussaini University, that we have this time to learn from each other. Salam alaikum. So tonight, we remember a story of faith, a story of loyalty, a story which has no parallel, the love of one brother towards another. Today, we remember somebody whose name means firmness. Abbas actually means firmness. It expresses his steadfastness in the face of enemies. And he had wonderful attributes and a fearless nature of what he had inherited from his blessed parents. In one of the accounts as to what did he look like, it is said, and the author has written, that he was a lofty mountain with a momentous heart, because he was a gallant knight and a fearless lion, daring in the face of attacks the striking of swords of non-believers in the field. This is a man that we are honoring tonight. He has many titles. The most popular one is, as we know, is Abul Fadl, the father of virtue. He also has another name, Abu al-Kirba, literally the father of the water skin, signifying that he was trying to bring water from Furat to quench the thirst at the request of Bibi Sakina. He is also called the moon of the Hashemites, Qamar-e-Bani Hashim, a title which was given to him by his father Imam Ali alayhi salam as he unveiled Abbas's face to the enemy at the Battle of Siffin. This is historic. This is where he was given that name. He has many other names. He is also called Abdul Saleh, the righteous servant of Allah. Al-Muwasi, we recite that in the Ziyarah. Al-Muwasi, which means one who gives consolation. Al-Fadl, Al-Fadi, which means one who sacrifices himself. Al-Hami, which means a defender. Al-Waki, which means the protector. And Al-Sa'i, which means the one who strives, and is also called Babul Hawaij, which means the doorway, the needs of people. And truly, he is the Babul Hawaij. He's also called Hamil al-Liwa, which means the standard bearer. As we know, in the early period of Islamic history, the person who held the alam, the standard bearer, enjoyed a very important status. It is like the commander-in-chief of the armies today. A lot rests on the shoulders of the standard bearers for strategy and so on and so forth. He was, in fact, the standard bearer. But on the day of Ashur, this standard bearer was seeing that one after another, those companions of the Imam, those soldiers of the Imam, were giving their shahada one by one. He comes up to Imam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam said that, "Oh my master, my heart has become constricted and I've grown tired of life. Please allow me to avenge the blood of the martyrs." Well, history says that they were listening to the cries of Al-Atash that we are thirsty from the tents. Imam says, "Oh Abbas, go and try and fetch some water for these thirsty children." And now the reporters write this, that not this majestic scene with which Abbas walks across through the lines of the enemies fearlessly and parts the enemy just like Nabi Musa parted the Nile, and he walks right up to Furat, right up to the water. They write to say, now note this majestic scene, what greatness, what valor, what spirit of understanding and self-sacrifice. A lone warrior, alone by himself, advances against a host of men who guarded the river bank with 4,000. He descends on the river bank and leads his horse into the water. Almost all historians who have reported on Hazrat Abbas and his movement towards Furat have actually confirmed and written this. This is not one report, these are several reports. And first he fills a water skin that he has brought and lays it on his shoulder. He is thirsty too. The air is hot. He's been fighting. But as he sits, as he looks at the water of the Furat, would Abbas drink? There was no question of Abbas even thinking about drinking that water. But as he sits at the back of his horse and the horse stands in the water, reaching up to its belly, yet even it is said that the horse was spiritually inclined not to drink. And then there are these Rajas verses which are recorded by the historians. You know, the Rajas verse are this war poetry to give them inspiration, to give them courage. These are war poetries which are being recited. And here is the Raja's verse of Hazrat Abbas. He said, O soul of Abul Fadl, my wish is that you live not after Hussein. Will you have a drink of cold water where there stands Hussein, thirsty near the tents and about to drink the cup of death? Such is not my way of faith, nor that of one who abides by conviction and truth. He is giving us also a message as to what our responsibilities are. I don't have those words to be able to use what happens in that battle as to how the enemies finally reach up to him. He tries to save the mosque, he tried to save the container as much as he could, but unfortunately he was not able to because both his arms were chopped off by the enemy. This is such a sad state. You know, every warrior who is shot by an arrow either tries to remove it from his body or with their hands. Hazrat Abbas faced 4,000 bowmen who had made him his target, but where were his hands for him to take those arrows out, Mu'mineen? Every rider upon dismounting from a horse places a hand on the saddle and the other on the bridle. How could a person without any hands dismount his horse? I want you to visualize this. Finally, as Imam Hussein al-Islam approaches Hazrat Abbas, where he is fallen, and he says, "Oh brother, why do you cry?" And Hazrat Abbas replies, "Oh brother, O light of my eyes, how could I not cry when I see you holding my head in your lap, and I know that in a while there will be no one to lift your head from the ground and place it in his lap and clean the dust from your face." Mu'mineen, this were the final words of Imam Hussein al-Islam when Hazrat Abbas breathed his last. He said, "Oh brother, oh Abbas, oh soul of my heart, oh for the destruction after you, oh Abbas, now that my back has been broken, my means of release have been devastated, and my hopes have been cut off. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to stay on the footsteps of valiant, faithful people like Hazrat Abbas, that we serve our community with candor, that we are part of a society of believers, and Allah gives us the strength, the courage and the tawfiq to be able to do our bit and our responsibility. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباكر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي جواد الذكي. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي النكي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي يا صاحب العصر والزمان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.